presentation up. So good evening, families who are joining us tonight for the Jefferson Pre-K webinar about Seesaw and remote learning. We do still have a couple of minutes before 6 p.m., so I don't want to start until I know everybody has had a chance to sign in. But just so you're aware, as it says on this opening slide, we are recording the webinar. Participants don't have the ability to turn on their microphones or their webcams, but you do have access to the Q&A tool, and that's where you'll be able to click and type in questions. And depending on what the questions are about, we'll either pause halfway through and answer some of them, or we'll stop at the end and we'll answer questions at the end of the session. And we'll make sure we get to everybody's questions as soon as possible, and hopefully get everything answered. And probably we'll wrap up around 6:45, maybe a little bit earlier, depending on how many questions and how many attendees we have. So it looks like we're up to 25 right now, which is good. We will start in about 1 more minute. If you just signed in, we will be recording tonight's session. It will be shared on the District 64 website in the near future. And I just want to wait 1 more minute to make sure that people get a chance to sign in, and then we will begin. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Looks like we're up to 31 participants. And let me just quickly introduce myself, and I'll ask my panelists to also introduce themselves in just a moment. So my name is Kevin Michael. I'm the Instructional Technology Coach, or ITC for short, for Carpenter School here in District 64. This is my 6th year as Carpenter's ITC. I was an elementary teacher for 10 years in Mundelein before I came to District 64. And tonight I will be your presenter for the webinar about Seesaw in Pre-K at Jefferson.
Hi, I'm Samantha Vanis. I am the technologist at Jefferson School. This is my 2nd year being at Jefferson. I was 1 year at Roosevelt Elementary also, but I'm happy to be here.
And I'm Lisa Halverson, the principal at Jefferson School. Thank you for joining us this evening.
And for those of you who came in after the first time I mentioned this, here in Zoom, we're using a tool called Q&A. You should see a button for it either on the bottom or the top of your Zoom window, depending on how the app is configured or whether you're using the web-based version. So as we're going through the presentation this evening, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the Q&A, and we will either stop to answer them halfway through, depending on how many we get, or we might wait until the end of the presentation and answer them all at the end, but we'll try to respond to all of those. As you can see on the slide that I'm presenting, we are recording this webinar. So if you want to refer back to any of the presentation at a later date, you will be able to come back in a few days and watch that on the District 64 website. Or for any families that aren't with us in the webinar tonight, they'll still have access to the information. So here we are for the student and parent pre-K Seesaw orientation for 2020-2021. So the first thing I just want to mention is that to remind families that in order to support our students being successful in school, they need not only their own dedication and responsibility, but they need the support and the dedication of parents and of district personnel. So we're going to talk about how all 3 of those groups have a shared responsibility in making sure that the students succeed in their learning. So we'll talk about the family component first. So Seesaw is the platform that Jefferson teachers will be using to share content, links, and video conferences with your students, with your children for remote learning this year. So we want to make sure that you can do your best to support students in connecting to Seesaw on a regular basis and accessing those activities on a personal device. We encourage you to talk about your expectations that you have for your children using the device for learning purposes. And we want you to understand that there will be times where activities that the children are assigned through Seesaw might be asynchronous activities, which means they will not be spending the entire remote school day necessarily in a Google Meet or a Zoom session on the device. Just some tips and ideas. You might want to, if you haven't already done so, you might want to have a family conversation about which device in your home the child will be using, when they will have access to it, how often they'll be able to use it, because sometimes it might be a shared family device, sometimes it might be a device that belongs to a parent, sometimes it might be a device that was actually purchased for the child. Make sure that you communicate with your child's teacher so that you know what the teacher's expectations are about how often and in what ways the child should be using the technology. And do your best to create a space in your home that's free from distractions so that during the remote school day, children will be able to focus on their learning activities. And just a tip for the purposes of using Seesaw, especially with younger children, we have found that the Seesaw app on iPad is very user-friendly and easy for kids to pick up. But we want to make sure everybody understands there is no expectation that you're going to go out and purchase an iPad just for the purpose of remote learning. If you happen to have one at home that's available for your child to use, that's fantastic. I recommend it. The app, Seesaw Class, is the app you would download. It is a free app. But if you don't have an iPad available, you can also access Seesaw on the web, on a desktop or a laptop, or any other mobile device. And then just some things about good digital citizenship for children. There's fun time and there's school time. So we want to make sure that the students understand that during school time, they're going to be in Seesaw or following directions that were provided to their teachers, either through Seesaw or through the virtual video conference that they had with the class at the start of the day. So we're going to move on now to district level expectations. So we are providing teachers and staff with professional development and support in using technology tools. I personally will be meeting with some members of the Jefferson staff tomorrow to help them get their Seesaw classes set up. I know that Mary Jane Warden, our Director of Technology and Innovation, was in contact with Jefferson staff today as well. And we'll be continuing, the tech department will continue to provide support and answer questions that staff might have about using Seesaw. Now, for the purposes of helping children log into Seesaw, so if you actually have a family device on hand ready to try out, whether it's an iPad with the Seesaw Class app already downloaded or a laptop and you're just on the Seesaw website, if you want to try some of these steps with us tonight, you are welcome to do so, but I don't want you to feel pressured. I don't want anybody to start running around the house trying to find the device or trying to download apps or anything like that. But if you are ready to try to follow along and want to do so right now, feel free. Otherwise, again, remember, you will have access to this presentation and this video in the very near future if you need to review any of this information. So the first step is finding out what your child's Google login information is, because Jefferson students will be using their District 64 Google accounts as their sign-in method for Seesaw. That way, children don't have to have a special class code sent home by the teacher, and they don't have to have any special newly created username or password that has to be memorized or written down somewhere, because this is an account that's already been created for them by the district. So if you do not know your child's Google account information, if you go to ps.d64.org/public, you'll be able to log in. You'll see a login window like the one on the screen right here. You'll be able to log into PowerSchool. The PowerSchool parent portal is a location you already would have logged in the past to register your children for school at Jefferson. So you should already have a username and password. And then when you sign in, there are actually directions. There are detailed directions on this link here for how to access the parent portal. So again, it's the PowerSchool D64 link. And if you have any specific questions about getting in, or if your password doesn't work, you can contact Kathy Lupo to ask about that. And you can click on the remote learning icon when you get in there, and you should find your child's Google account username and password. Now, just a quick tip for pre-K students, all of their passwords are just the number 64. They'll get a unique password that's different from all the other kids in their classes when they reach 2nd grade. But for pre-K through grade 1, every student's password is 64. That way they just have to know their username. I'm gonna go back into our slides. So again, and you'll also see highlighted right here on the slide, a phone number you can call for support if you need help logging into the PowerSchool parent portal. So we're going to take a look at Seesaw now. So we're going to look at 2 ways to log into Seesaw. So I mentioned that iPads are recommended, but again, not required for children to access Seesaw. And if you're going to use an iPad, you need to make sure that you download the Seesaw Class app. The icon will actually have this Seesaw graphic with the different colors and the word class written below it. There's another Seesaw app also available in the App Store, which is called Seesaw Family. Don't download the Seesaw Family app on the device that your student is going to be using. It will create a lot of confusion, and when they try to sign in to their student account, it won't work. The Family app is meant for parents to sign in and view their students' digital journal and announcements sent from the teacher. But the Class app is what's used for children to log in and engage with activities and content in the Seesaw platform. So, sorry, didn't mean to go to the next slide just yet. If you are using a device that is not an iPad or is not a mobile device, so you're not using the app, the Seesaw website, the interface is almost identical to the interface on the iPad. The advantage of the iPad for younger learners is the touchscreen features, which is why we're recommending it. But if your child is accessing Seesaw on the web, the interface is identical other than the lack of touchscreen features. So I'm just going to show you really quickly what that looks like. They would just go to the URL app.seesaw.me. They would click on I'm a student. Oh, sorry, it's logging me into my account automatically because it's got my password info saved. Let me sign out so I can show you the actual login screen. Sorry about that. So this is what the students will see when they go to app.seesaw.me, and they would choose I'm a student. And then this is a place where I want to make sure I'm very clear about this, because we had some parents confused about this earlier in the week, and some even back in spring when remote learning began. On this page, your student will click this button at the top that says sign in with Google. They will not type anything in the email box. They will not type anything in the password box. They will simply click the sign in with Google button. After they do that, they will be prompted to either choose an account that's already signed in on the device, or they'll be prompted to enter their Google email address in a new pop-up window like the one you see on my screen now. So this is where you would type in the student's email address, and then you would click next and you would type in 64 as the student's password, and it would sign the students in automatically to their Seesaw class. So I'm going to go through that one more time because I know some families are possibly trying to follow along and do this live, and I want to make sure that everybody's successful. Now, again, if you're not able to find your child's actual District 64 username, here's one thing I can tell you. If you're not able to get into the PowerSchool portal, the formula we use for the Google username is the student's year of graduation from middle school, which I believe for our pre-K students this year is 2030. And it's followed by their first initial and last name, and then at studentsd64.org. So I'll show you what that might look like. So if I was going to use, if this was my child, so I'm going to type in 2030. If I have a pre-K student who's at Jefferson, I know she's going to graduate in 2030 from middle school. Then I'm going to type her first initial. In my case, I'll use one of my daughters. Her first initial is C. And I'm going to type her full last name, which is Michael. And then I'm going to put at students 64.
Share the
I'm
right.
sorry?
It's not coming up on the screen.
The Google
Are you
one.
seeing Seesaw on the screen?
Well, Seesaw, but not what you're typing.
Oh, okay. So I think I know why. I think it's because I'm in a pop-up window to type into Google. I apologize. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. And I'm sorry to the parents who may have been confused that you're not seeing what I'm seeing. Let me see if I can remedy that.
I believe it's for 4-year-olds, the graduation year is 2030. For 3-year-olds, it's 2031.
Right. Good point.
Using it.
All right. Do you see the choose an account window now on my screen?
Yes,
Excellent. Okay, good. So let me go back. So one more time.
Kevin, just really quickly, a person asked, when you say iPad, do you mean any tablet can be used besides an iPad?
It depends on whether the App Store for that tablet has a Seesaw Class app available on it. I do not know what tablets other than iPads have that app, because iPads are the only type of tablet we use in District 64, and they're the only type of tablet that I've used for personal use that I'm familiar with. So you would want to check and make sure that there is a current version of the Seesaw Class app on that tablet, and if so, it should work. So I think everybody sees my Seesaw screen, and if I click on I'm a student, you should now see student sign in. And I'm going to click one more time on this sign in with Google button. Again, remember, I'm not typing an email address. I'm not typing in a password here. I'm just clicking sign in with Google. Now I have a pop-up window on my screen. Does everybody see that pop-up window that says choose an account? All right, so this was up on my screen earlier, but you couldn't see it, so I apologize. I'm gonna click use another account because I don't want to sign in with my teacher account. So this is the place where I would put in, so I'm gonna say I have a 4-year-old, so 2030 for middle school graduation year. First initial, complete last name, at studentsd64.org. That would be the username. So the suffix is the same for all students in the district, at students with an S, plural, d64.org. And the prefix is your child's graduation year, first initial, full last name. After clicking next, which isn't going to work for me because this is not an actual account. I made this up for my child who's not a D64 student. But after clicking next, you would be prompted to enter a password, and the password, see, it's giving me an error because that's not a real account. But if on the next screen, the password would just be 64. No letters, nothing else, just the number 64 for district 64.
There are 3 different people that are saying their email couldn't find your account when they did it. So I'll check on that to make sure that pre-K is all set up with Seesaw and everything. I just want to say, I just want to check first because it says, do you have to register? People ask, like, do you have to register first? So I'll just make sure that it is set up and everything.
Okay.
They are logging in, it says couldn't find your account.
All right, yeah, that would be something that we probably wouldn't be able to check on right now, but yeah, please email Samantha or Lisa Halverson if your account info is not there, and we'll look into it and try to find why it's not showing up. All right, so now you should see, I should be back in the Seesaw slides. You should see the presentation where we clicked on the links for Seesaw class and Seesaw login website. This is just a step-by-step visual guide of logging in. Now, this is specifically on the iPad, the iOS app. So as you can see in the screenshots, the interface is very similar. When students first open the app, they'll be prompted to choose whether they're a teacher or a student. They'll click on I'm a student. As you see in screen 2A right here, they'll click a blue button in the app that says Google/email sign in. And then, as you see in 2B, they'll click another sign in with Google button. So there's 2 Google buttons to click on in the app. They click on the blue button. They don't enter a code because there's a place for a text code on that screen, but we're not going to use join codes or class codes in Seesaw this year. So they'll click the blue Google email sign in button, then the sign in with Google button that's got the multicolored G logo. And after that, you might be prompted to have permission to use google.com to sign in on the iPad. You will have to give permission by clicking continue. and that will bring you to a Google sign-in page, similar to the one that we saw earlier. You'll type in your child's 2030 or 2031 first initial, last name at Students D64. You'll type in their password, which is 64. You'll click Next. And when you do, it should, if it's successful, and if your child is connected to the Seesaw account, it will take them to the landing page where they'll have access to their classes and any posts or announcements that have been shared by the teacher. So this slide is about the daily structure of remote learning, the daily schedule structure for pre-K students. Ms. Halverson, would you mind telling families a little bit about the schedule slides?
Sure. So some of these slides, the majority of these parts of the structure will be synchronous, which will mean that there'll be video conferencing with the teacher or other staff members. So the circle time will be kind of at the beginning of the day. The physical education class will be dependent upon what day of the week the kids have physical education. The small groups will be done on a daily basis, and then there'll be a closing circle. Those will all be synchronous, so those will be video conferencing. The choice learning activities are the asynchronous activities that will be available through Seesaw. As Kevin mentioned, that many times those will not, you'll access the activity through Seesaw, but it won't require the child to actually be engaged with the technology other than learning what they need to do. So it'll be off technology at that point.
Thank you. So this is a visual guide to how you can navigate Seesaw. So if anybody was able to successfully sign in and wants to try this out on the device, feel free. If you weren't, oh, and one other thing I should mention, for anybody, if your child's account is active and they were able to log in, you may or may not be able to see any classes at this time. Technically, the learning period for the year doesn't start until Thursday. So until the grading period begins, students might not be able to see their classes, but they should be visible on Thursday morning, if not sooner. But if you were able to log in and want to try this out, or just for your information, if you're not currently logged in, when students sign in, this is a screenshot here in the left-hand side of my slide. In the top left of the screen, and this is whether you're on the iPad app or on the Seesaw website, you will see the student's name. Clicking on the name will show a drop-down of any classes that the student is enrolled in. So if they're enrolled in classes with more than one teacher, they'll be able to look at any of their teachers' classes in Seesaw. On the right, they'll see the name of the class in the top right-hand corner and a class icon. The default icon is usually letters of the abbreviation of the name of the class. So this class is called Homeroom Example, so it's got HE for Homeroom Example. Teachers do have the option to update that with an icon, like a little cartoon image, an apple or a duck or something like that. Underneath the name of the class, you will see 3 menu options. The first option on the left is the journal. Any activities that your child has completed and submitted to the teacher will be found by clicking on the journal, and they'll be visible over here in the left-hand side in the main navigation of the Seesaw journal. The second menu item is activities. Those are Seesaw's version of assignments. That's something that teachers have shared with students, usually with an expectation that the students will respond in some way. Sometimes the students respond by recording their voice, answering a question, or recording a video of themselves. Sometimes they respond by taking a photo of something and uploading the photo to Seesaw. Sometimes they might respond by drawing or writing something on the screen, or sometimes it might be a combination. So for example, a student could draw a picture on the screen and then also record his or her voice explaining or describing the drawing, and then submit the voice recording and drawing together as one journal entry for the teacher. And then on the right, the third item is inbox. This is where announcements from the teacher will be received, and this is where teachers will be sharing their daily schedule. So when your child first logs into Seesaw for the day, the first thing they should do is make sure they're in their main teacher's course, homeroom course, if they're in more than one class. And then they will click on the inbox to look for new announcements. And in that inbox, they should see the schedule for the day, which would include any links to Google Meet or Zoom video conference sessions that the students would join. So this is just a close-up of what it looks like to navigate between classes. And I don't honestly know if Jefferson students would be assigned to more than one Seesaw class. I don't know if Sam or Lisa might be able to answer that for us. But if they are, they would navigate, again, by clicking on their name in the top left corner, and then they would see this drop-down menu listing any classes they're connected to, and they would just click on the class they needed to join.
If students if there's any students with special needs, they will have a different class for speech services or OT services or social work. But the PE class will be within the navigation of the AM or PM attendance class.
All right, here's another example. So this is, again, I mentioned a moment ago, the inbox is where announcements from the teacher would be found. That's where students should go to at the beginning of the day to find their daily schedule. So they click on the inbox icon, they will see class announcements listed here underneath the inbox icon. And when they click on an announcement, it'll open up the announcement over here in the left-hand main navigation. So this is just a quick welcome announcement shared by a practice classroom. Any links, again, to Zoom sessions or to Google Meet video sessions would also be shared in this schedule. So we're going to look a little bit more closely at the activities menu options here. This is where, again, assignments from the teacher that need some kind of completion or submission by the student would be located. And this is a new feature they just added to Seesaw earlier this month. The to-do list feature helps students know what they still need to accomplish during their day. So any activities that have been assigned by the teacher that the student has not already done will be found by tapping or clicking, depending on the device, on to do underneath the activities menu. Any activity that a student has begun working on but may not have finished and submitted to the teacher would be found by tapping or clicking on the in progress menu option. And then any activities that the student has already completed and turned into the teacher could be found by clicking on done. So this is a good way for students or parents to navigate Seesaw on the web or the Seesaw app to find out what activities still need to be completed that day, what activities are started but not turned in, and what activities have already been turned into the teacher. And again, as Ms. Halverson said a moment ago, most of the students' remote learning day would occur in the attendance class for the students. But if they also see any other related services, they would click up here on their name and they would choose those other teachers' classes from the drop-down menu. And again, here's the inbox. This is an example of what the schedule for the day might look like. And this teacher has put in their schedule a little link to a Google Meet video session with directions. Click here and enter the nickname. This is just an animated GIF showing you what it looks like to navigate through the activities. So you can see clicking on to do, clicking on in progress, clicking on what's already been done. So in this particular case, there are no in progress or finished activities for this student, but there is one assigned activity, this domino addition activity, that still needs to be completed. And what students will do when they go to the activity is they'll click on the green add response button, and it will bring them into the screen where they can do their voice recording, their video, their photo, their drawing, or whatever it is that the directions have asked them to do. So we do have links in these slides. Again, these are not links I'm going to open right now, but you will have access to these slides in the near future. And when you do, you'll be able to go, this is a link directly to the D64 technology page where you can find additional information or contact info and email addresses. Good links for digital citizenship. Common Sense Media is one that I use both as an ITC and also as a parent to find information. They have a really good lessons, activities, information about movies, video games, anything that you might want to know more about to find out if it's appropriate for your child. Need help now is another one. And then there are additional tech troubleshooting tips that can be found here. I'll give you just a short preview of what information you would find there. Reminders that if your device is not working, whatever type of device it is, sometimes restarting is enough to fix whatever the problem is, whether it's a laptop, a desktop, a tablet, or a phone. Also make sure if you have the ability to reach out and contact the student's teacher, just let them know, like, our Wi-Fi is down, our power went out, we're having trouble logging in. That way, at least the teacher will know that you're making an attempt to get in, and hopefully they'll be able to help you troubleshoot or direct your questions to the technology department. And then again, a reminder, students should always be, if you're using a mobile device, students should always be using the Seesaw Class App, not the Seesaw Family App. There's also a video in here just showing iPad navigation basics. I'm not going to play that now because I know a lot of you aren't using iPads, but I want you to know it's accessible in here once you have these slides. And then this is just a quick basic troubleshooting that we share with students and teachers who are using iPads. You can force the device to restart if it's locked up or frozen by holding the sleep wake button at the top and the round home button on the front simultaneously down for about 10 seconds. It will do a hard reset and force the device to shut down and restart. And that home button at the bottom, if you double tap it rapidly, and those of you who either own iPads or maybe are iPhone users, you may be familiar with this interface, it'll show you a grid of all the apps that are open. So if Seesaw is not working properly, seems to be malfunctioning, either it won't record or the kids can't submit their activities to teachers, try that double tap and swipe up on the Seesaw app to close it completely, and then reopen it and see if that works to solve the problem. And then there is also a Google form that you can fill. Whoops, sorry, that link did not. Oh, that is a broken link. I'll have to check. I don't know if Sam has that link, or we'll check with Mary Jane Warden otherwise to see if she's got the link that we can put in there, so that parents will have access to that when they get the slides. But I don't know if this is true at Jefferson, but I know at the elementary schools, parents, when they log into the PowerSchool parent portal, they also have the option to complete a technology support ticket to receive tech support. Sam, do you happen to know if that's the case for Jefferson as well?
That is the case.
Okay, so if you need troubleshooting help, I'll go back actually to, if I can find, whoops. So earlier I was talking about how you can log into the parent portal of PowerSchool to find your student's Google username and password. You can also find a link to create a technology support ticket if you're having problems with your child's Google account, Seesaw account, or need device troubleshooting support.
Kevin, can I just clarify maybe with Sam?
Sure.
Should we be asking parents to do I saw that you had a link, or should we be using the portal for the technology issues that parents are reporting needing support? Should we just be using the parent portal as opposed to the link that wasn't working?
Yes, they're in the parent portal under forms would be where there is a form for technology support in there. That's the one you should be using.
Okay.
So we'll get that fixed in that slide for when it's shared out with parents. But yeah, so as Sam said, go to the PowerSchool parent portal to request tech support. So that brings us to the end of our formal presentation. So I'm going to ask Sam Vanis to, she's going to read through the questions that people have submitted to the Q&A, and the three of us will try to respond to those questions.
Great. Just an informational one, Seesaw Class is available on the Google Play Store. So if there's a different app or a different device, tablet that you're using besides an iPad, it is in the Google Play Store. But someone else mentioned that it doesn't give the option of signing in through a Google account. So we'll have to look more into that, why, if you should be using the Seesaw app on a tablet that's not an iPad, or if you just want to use the web on that tablet.
Right, and that could work. I have used Seesaw on an iPad in the Safari web browser app instead of the downloadable app, with pretty similar experiences to using the web-based version. So that could be an option on if you have an Android tablet that uses Google Play. If for some reason I would be surprised that a Google Play app wouldn't allow Google sign-in. That seems strange to me. But if you find that's the case on your family device, then hopefully you could just access it through the Chrome browser or whatever web browser is installed on the tablet.
Would a Chromebook work okay to use with Seesaw? I don't know if she means that they have a Chromebook with this touch screen. Will it work as a touch on that Chromebook?
Well, technically, I'm assuming we're talking about a personal family Chromebook, because if it's a district Chromebook that's owned by an older student, those are one-to-one devices for a purpose. So those devices should not be shared with siblings, older or younger. But if you're talking about a personal Chromebook, it absolutely would work. They would just go to app.seesaw.me. And whether the device is touchscreen or not, again, touchscreen is a nice feature for younger children. But even if it's not a touchscreen device, going to the website on a Chromebook definitely works. That's actually how all of our second graders and up use Seesaw. We even have middle school students and teachers who use Seesaw on their Chromebooks.
So if they have another child with a District 64 iPad that already has Seesaw, can they use the iPad?
That iPad should only be used by the kindergarten or first grade student that it was assigned to.
Okay.
And the same is true for any district assigned Chromebooks.
Okay. Can you show us how to upload a picture to Seesaw?
I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute because I'm going to have to actually go and log in as a student in Seesaw to do that. So give me a moment to do that. And while I'm doing that, if you want to read through the next couple questions.
If you're signing, it says, how do we sign into the parent portal for the first time? If you have a question about the parent portal, I would definitely reach out to Miss Kathy Lupo to get that first time in the parent portal. But you should have, if you've registered, you should have already have access to the parent portal. Do they have to go through Chrome if our teacher uses some Google Meet and some through Zoom?
So I'm going to need clarification. So are you asking going through Chrome to access Seesaw or going through Chrome just to get to the virtual class meeting? So if whoever typed that question could clarify if you're talking about using Chrome to get to Seesaw or if you're talking about using Chrome to access the video session.
Separate question. The older children in District 64 are expected to be doing their work alone for privacy reasons for their classmates. Is this the same expectation for the younger kids?
When you say, I'm going to ask for clarification. I'm assuming when you say doing work alone, that you're meaning without the help of a parent. If that's what you're asking, and I think Lisa should probably chime in on this too, but I would say that we're trying to make this as independent an experience as possible for the students because we know that parents might be working, they might not even be home, children might be in a childcare setting or with a family member. So we want the children to be as independent as possible, but we also are cognizant of the fact that when we're talking about 3 and 4-year-olds, there's only a certain level of independence that can be expected. But Lisa, if you want to elaborate on that.
No, I would just reiterate what you said. I mean, I think that initially the parents are going to need to be more interactive as the kids get more comfortable with it. And a lot of it's going to be dependent upon, what their experience has been with the use of technology before and as they gain. And then as the year goes on, as they get more experience, hopefully you can pull away a little bit more.
All right, I'm actually, for whatever reason, I keep getting looped out of my student account when I try to sign into Seesaw. Let me try for one more minute. Are there any more questions in the Q&A, Sam?
But why/how would the preschooler use a touch screen for what purpose?
So in Seesaw, in addition to having the option to upload photos or videos or to record their voice, children actually, for certain activities, can actually draw or write on the touchscreen to add their own pictures or their own written or pre-writer written responses to activities in Seesaw.
And just to elaborate on that as well, there may be an activity where children are needing to circle or something that is circle the red, whatever, the red colors, you know, shapes or things like that. They can use the touch screen to indicate that those are the ones that they've identified.
So my, I have a fake student account for Seesaw, and for whatever reason, right now in my Chrome browser, that student cannot sign in. So I'm gonna see if I can switch over to my regular teacher account real quick, because I know people wanted to see a demonstration of how files or photos would be uploaded to an activity. I apologize for the delay.
Is there any reason for a family to get the Seesaw Family app instead of the Seesaw Class one?
No, you need the Seesaw Class app if you're going to be using a mobile device, because the Family app does not allow students to sign in. The Family app only allows parents to sign in to view their students' work. So the Family app is an extra that you could consider in the future. My recommendation is don't even download it yet, because you won't be able to use it until teachers turn on family access in their Seesaw classes, and that's not turned on yet. And we've been advising teachers not to turn on that feature until after we've got every single student signed in at least one time and connected through the student app or through the website. That's just to avoid a lot of the technical difficulties we experienced last spring with students trying to sign in on the family app by mistake.
And I think this was a follow-up when the question was about going through Chrome.
Right.
The person said, yeah, it's you, Kevin, you mentioned Safari to get to Seesaw, so other browsers would work, correct?
Yes, they would. Sorry, I just mentioned Safari because I was talking about my personal iPad, and since Safari is the default browser on iPad devices, but it should work in the Chrome browser as well, yes.
Okay, and then the last one here is just, what are pre-K idea funding classes? They have 3 in theirs. I don't know, Lisa, you can answer that one. Oh, you're muted, Lisa.
I think that is just how the class is designated right now. The teacher will be going in and changing the class. I think it's coming through PowerSchool, Sam, so I'm not sure exactly how those classes are identified in PowerSchool. So my understanding, and Kevin, you can clarify, my understanding is that the teacher can change the name of their class to make it more personal or understood. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And Lisa, that's correct. That idea funding is one of the titles we use for preschool classes. So it can change if the teacher changes it. That's comes
So
from.
If that were my class, I could go into Seesaw tomorrow and change it to be Mr. Michael's Pre-K or whatever I wanted to call it. So I think I am correctly sharing again. You should see a screen that says post student work. So this is where this is after a student has already logged into Seesaw and already opened an activity that has been assigned by the teacher. When they do that, based on the directions, they may have access to any or all of these options to be able to take a photo, and they would click on it and it would actually ask them permission depending on the device. If you're on a laptop or an iPad, you might be prompted, I get my weird yellow screen there. You might be prompted to enable camera access for Seesaw or for the Chrome browser or whatever web browser you're using. So you will have to allow camera access. You'll also have to allow microphone access for video or audio recording the first time you try to do it through a web browser or through the app. But this is the drawing tool. So I'm going to click on drawing. And if the teacher, I think Lisa gave an example earlier where students might have different objects and they would have to circle one, like circle the one that's the color red or something like that. So if there was already an object here on the screen, or if let me just put here, I'm just going to put in a couple of stamp tools here. So if the teacher gave an activity to the students and the directions said, circle the star in red, over here on the right, students can actually choose from this rainbow menu the color of the pen tool, and then they can choose different writing tools from the bottom. So I'm going to use my pencil tool. I'm going to use, whoops, red, and I'm going to use, in this case, I'm using the mouse, but on an iPad, they would just use the touchscreen to draw the circle around the star. And then maybe, maybe they would say now, draw a green box around the circle. So I can switch to the green pen tool. It's really hard to draw a square on a touchpad. I apologize. Doing my best. It looks kind of like an Etch-a-Sketch. So that's an example of why the students might benefit from having a touchscreen device, because doing something like that with a mouse or with a touchpad on a laptop or a desktop computer can be pretty challenging. I think we have at least one new question. It looked like there was a red indicator, but maybe we already covered that one.
This person, they were able to get on the Seesaw class on their iPad since we signed up back in springtime. But when they signed into Seesaw class on her iPhone, it signed in okay, but it's asking for a join code to connect to the class.
There should not
Where did
be
they get the code?
There are no join codes. So please don't email a teacher asking for a join code, and don't try to enter one. I don't know why you're being prompted for one, but one of the main reasons we're having students sign in with Google is to avoid using a join code. So that's something we'll have to look at from the tech standpoint to see if there's a setting that needs to be changed, but we'll look into that and try to get it fixed as soon as possible. We do need to wrap up the session in the next minute or two. I actually have another session that I have to present this evening for carpenter families. So are there any questions in the Q&A, Sam, that you think we need to cover before we sign off?
One thing, should they have use their finger if it's a touchpad or a stylus? Do you think that? Either
or. Okay. It's if you have a stylus available, I would offer the student the choice. Let them try both and see which one they prefer and which one's more effective for them.
Okay. I believe that's it right now.
All right. Well, I want to thank all of the family members who joined us tonight for your time and for your excellent questions. Again, we will make sure that anything in the slides that needs to be updated will be updated before they're shared with you. And the video recording of this session will be shared on the District 64 website in the very near future. And if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to anybody in this panel and ask us anytime in the future. Have a great school year. Thanks again for joining us, and have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.